Welcome to another episode. My name is Dean Vassy. You can find me on X at #Kangas, Instagram, #Kangaroos Podcast. So today I have back the man, the myth, the legend, Mark. Hello. Mark, it's been a long time and we are here to get your version 1 team as well, but might get your thoughts like I did the other day with Jesse and George Wardlaw doing his hamstring, probably out half the year, you'd have to think. The club's going to be extra cautious with him, a high-grade hamstring strain. Who do you think replaces him in those CBAs, particularly in the first half of the year?
It's a pity for George, isn't it? Because he was looking so good and done so much work to get him. His legs look like tree trunks, so it was sort of getting exciting to think that no one's going to be able to tackle this guy this year. But I agree with you that they'll be ultra conservative. They will not rush him back. I mean, 12 weeks, I guess, is conservative anyway, but it'll be plenty of games in the VFL. It'll be a slow build-up. You're probably right. It could be, much beyond round 7 or 8. But I think the informed player of the pre-season's been Powell, so it probably gives him a chance to have a lot more CBAs than he might have had otherwise. And Phillips will be the other one who now probably gets a look into the side, into the 22 that might have struggled otherwise. I think he would have been pushed out if George was playing. Or he might have been emergency, but now I think he'll cut because George is pretty much a full-time mid. He can play forward, but they generally give him bursts in the midfield and he comes off. So Phillips can now potentially play a bit of that role, albeit that Parker and Simpkin will get more time in the midfield, but those two can play forward, whereas Phillips can't. And Powell can play back, but I don't think they need him back. So the form he's in, you take advantage of his good form and give him the CBAs, I would have thought.
Might depend a little bit on matchups as well. Like a mature body team like Geelong, you might want to get Luke Parker in there for a few more. Sure. We got round 1. Well, we don't know who the Bulldogs are going to have in there at the moment. Well, Bontempelli, Treloar's injured at the moment. So, it's going to be...
Bontempelli is interesting because we've struggled so much with him in the past and we haven't really had a matchup that makes sense. If it was 24 months in advance, you'd go Urquhart would be perfect for him. And can you hear me?
Yeah. I was. Someone just said, "Give us a wave." So inflatable cactus. So I
thought you were waving as in
no. All good, mate. Keep going.
I was just going to say Urquhart in the future would be perfect for that sort of role on Bontempelli, but he might not quite be ready by round 1. We'll see what happens in the lead up. But I mean, given Wardlaw's out, if Urquhart had a fantastic couple of games or he got an opportunity in the pre-season games, maybe he'd be the person to play on Bontempelli. But I just keep hearing that his kicking's a bit of an issue still since his hip surgery, major hip surgery. So he might take a bit longer to develop. But a lot of good things being said about him, and he's a big, strong boy for sure.
No, he definitely is. Inflatable Cactus said, Kane Corn said we could win round 1. Well, they've got a lot of injuries at the Bulldogs at the moment, so we're definitely a chance. But
I think a chance is a more realistic way to look at it. I don't think those. Few people said we must win now, but I think we've lost George. They've lost a couple more. They're still a good side. They've got a fair bit of depth in that list. Treloar goes out, but then they've got their gun, young fella. Who didn't get a lot of games last year, but he's very talented. So they've got a good list. I mean, I do think we're a chance, and I think we'll go hard round 1, but I wouldn't count on it for sure.
No, we'll worry about that in 5 or 6 weeks. It's coming around pretty quick, isn't it, at the moment, mate? Yeah. Now, other news, LDU has been offered 7 years. I still think this plays out early in the year. Everyone within the 4 walls seems confident he's going to re-sign. Harry Sheasel came out, I think it was yesterday, said, we're very confident he's going to re-sign. Do you feel any different?
I just can't imagine Simpkin as well as Sheasel. They're so confident about it and they're making jokes that we're pressuring him and all this thing. But they're coming out public and saying he's going to sign. I mean, I can't imagine you would do that unless you knew he either had signed and they're waiting on the release of it, or they know it's very imminent and he's told them it's imminent. I originally sort of did worry that it was just we were getting into an auction and it was just his manager playing games. That when I heard that, I thought, oh yeah, that makes sense. Maybe that is what's going on. But why would he do that? He's just putting public pressure on him. I don't think it works. But maybe they're going to wait till we've had a couple of good wins and then really use it to build membership or something like that. I get the feeling it's in the can, whether it's actually signed or not. It's happened. It's happening, I should say. Because I just can't imagine the players would just come out publicly, because he wouldn't do that to someone. If you knew he wasn't, you didn't know what he was thinking, you wouldn't do that, because it would cause friction within the club. So, I reckon things are looking pretty positive there. Plus,
I mean,
we're not hearing it. We're not hearing St Kilda throwing his name out there anymore, or any other club. It's gone very quiet from the other club's perspective. We're hearing Matt Rouse talking to people. All the Conning is being offered huge money by St Kilda, but the LDU talk's gone very quiet in terms of other clubs.
Well, Inflatable Cactus is coming again. If LDU leaves, I'll get a UDL tattoo on my left arse cheek. He is staying, apparently. So he's very confident.
Yeah, I think that's right.
No, but look, you never know. Things can change pretty quickly. It often does. I mean, every player that goes up to the media, they're going to get asked that question. There's no.
It's the way they're answering the question. They're being
of course.
Decisive.
Yeah, of course. So we'll see how that plays out. It would be nice if we don't have the Cameron Zurhaar distraction of last year, where it's just going through the whole course of the year, and the speculation just grows and grows further. But yeah, there's not much you can do about it at the end of the day. Also, we had the captaincy, and as solo captain this year, Luke McDonald steps down, and just the two vice captains, as opposed to having 8 leaders into the leadership group. Your thoughts on this, Mark?
I don't mind it. I often think the massive leadership groups are a bit pointless. And they've obviously had discussions internally and it hasn't worked. That style hasn't worked. And I don't have any issue with it. I'm not close enough to make any real strong judgments, obviously. But the 3 people involved are pretty good. They're good quality people, that's for sure. And you'd have to think Sheasel's not far away from taking over at some point. But even Larky could take over, and I wouldn't be against that. But you just get the feeling Sheasel's such a strong character at the club that if it's not next season, it's certainly the one after.
Yeah, I was about to ask you that. It was going to be a follow-up question. You think it's probably next year or two? You'd have to think that, wouldn't you?
Unless for some reason he gets a bad injury and they want him to focus on that, or his form drops away and they want him to focus on his own game. But the more responsibility he gets, you get the feeling he's just going to enjoy that. I don't think it'll ever have a negative effect on him. And he's such a strong leader and confident in the way he operates without being arrogant. So, I can't imagine anything other than him becoming. I think Simpkin doing it on his own for 1 more year is not a bad thing.
No.
And then Simpkin will hang around. Obviously, it'd still be there to support him as he becomes captain as well. And they've got Parker and these guys there. So next year would be good timing to have those older guys around him still, just to help him through his first year as captain, if that's what happens. But if his form's good as vice captain, it's anything. If all it has to be is as good as his first 2 years, really. He hasn't done much wrong.
No.
Then it'll go close, I reckon.
Look, it's just a matter of time. He already is the face of the club, isn't he, Mark? Like every media conference or when the women were going well in the finals, the camera was straight on him. He had to make speeches. I mean, it's effectively there's a lot of pressure on him. I think externally, but he seems to handle it in his stride, doesn't he?
Yeah, I don't think Jai or Luke particularly liked the outside the club stuff, the media stuff at all. Whereas Harry's it just seems like it's easy for him. There's no stress involved for him. He's very relaxed. Anyone who hears him on the radio quite regularly can hear him. He's so intelligent, and it's so natural for him to be able to speak and make sense and say all the right things. He never seems to make a mistake. And clearly internally they love him anyway. So the players have voted him in as vice captain. They're probably 12 months away from voting him in as captain. I can't see any reason why he couldn't take over. But again, unless his form drops off or he had an injury, they wanted him to focus on his recovery, then I'm sure he'll take over very soon.
We don't want him to get injured, Mark, because the last 2 games last year, he was injured and we copped a couple of comprehensive beltings. So we can't afford to get him injured. He can't afford to get injured, can he?
No, definitely not.
Him and probably Nick Larkey at this stage pretty important to that team going forward. All right, going through version 1 teams now, Mark, have you done your homework on this?
I have. I'll say I actually didn't find it difficult until the last couple of spots around the interchange emergency area.
Nice.
And I've gone mainly on form, with one exception. But what I found most interesting about doing this team was the once you got to the last few spots, there were literally 10 players you could put in there. So the depth of the club has gone through the roof. And there's like 7 or 8 players who could literally say are unlucky not to be picked in the first round team. But this could easily change. Just 4 or 5 spots could change over the next month depending on form. But up till now, I'm sort of looking at the form that's been happening over the match sims more than anything else.
Oh, fair enough. All right, well, we'll get straight into it. Let's go to the back line. Who you got as your back 6?
So the 5 that I think pick themselves are Daniels in the back pocket, Core, Archer, Logan, Comben. And then this one has been on the very recent form. I think Fisher's started to play really well off half back. And I think he might get that starting position, but that one is the one I think could easily change over the next few weeks, depending on how things play out. Because you've got Hardeman, Gota, Luke McDonald, Bergman to a lesser extent, but you've got a few running off that half back line, and then you've got guys. Powell no longer is likely to play off there now, so that probably gives it a few more options. And McKerch is less likely to play there. He seems to look like now it's more wing or in the midfield for him. So, but Fisher they sound like they've been happy with Fisher over the last few weeks, and he seems to be in good form. So at the moment, I've got him there.
Are you worried it's a bit undersized with him and Caleb Daniel there?
Not so much with Core, Comben, and Logue. I think those 3. If you had one of those guys out, then I think Gota has to play there. But with the 3 talls there, I think they're okay. I mean, you're right. I mean, Archer plays a lot taller than he is. He takes a lot of mark. So Archer will have to take a few grabs. So you've got really Daniels and Fisher. Daniels distributing, Fisher doing the running. I think you have to have someone running hard off half back. But Hardeman or Gota could easily play that role. I mean, Luke McDonald is another one. But Luke's not a great runner off half back. So I find it hard for him to play in the same side as Daniels and Archer. That all 3 of those guys aren't going to squeeze into that side. Daniels is definitely playing because of his amazing disposal. So his kicking is going to be crucial. That could be one of the biggest differences between last year, I think. And Archer's so good on the lockdown role. So, I mean, Luke McDonald's going to find it hard early on, but they might have a half-back flanker playing off the bench. We'll have to see.
Oh, well, there's always a back 7, generally.
Yeah.
There's always a defender that's on the bench to rotating through.
Yeah.
It will be interesting to see what direction they go. They might go a young bloke like a Josh Gota. I think Inflatable Cactus came in again with him. But I don't know where he's at as far as because he did do his Achilles.
Might take a few VFL. They might have a slow build up for him, I reckon.
No, definitely. Riley Hardeman has looked really good in pre-seasons from all reports.
Yeah.
He showed a bit last year at AFL level. So
he looks strong too. He's put on some serious muscle.
Yeah, so he could definitely play that role. And, of course, we've got Luke McDonald. So there is a plethora of options. You're obviously thinking that McKercher probably gets out of there?
Yeah, I think they were talking about McKercher and Powell rotating off half-back midfield, but especially now with the injury to George, I think that's not going to happen. I think Powell's going to be mainly midfield, and I think McKercher will do wing and midfield. And rotate around. He and potentially Finn O'Sullivan, but that's yet to be decided. But yeah, so I think McKercher's more wing midfield now.
Well, we might as well go to the wingers. We're going up the ground. Who you got on the wing?
I've got Scott McKercher at the moment.
Yeah, same as me. So probably no brainer. I think McKercher. I said this to Jesse the other day. I'd like to see him kicking the ball in the forward half. kicking the ball inside forward 50, hitting up Nick Larkey on the lead, or even a Jack Darling or whoever else we've got down there, rather than actually just getting those possessions in the back half, where it was a little bit too static last year. He was getting a lot of cheapish sort of possessions that weren't as damaging. So I'd like to see
he can still drift back and break the lines from there anyway. So I think it makes sense. You'd rather have him up a bit, as you said, doing some damage, getting the ball inside 50 for sure.
Yeah, well, we'll definitely see what they do with Colby this year. I'm curious to that, especially in the early pre-season. What about the centre square?
So I've got LDU in the mid in the centre, and then Cherry, Sheasel, Powell as that starting midfield.
Yeah, I think would you have had Wardlaw if he was fit?
Yeah. I think Powell, I would have. I mean, it sounds silly, but I would have had Powell starting on the bench, but he'd be on the. That's not a criticism of him. He would have been on the ground within 2 or 3 minutes anyway. But yeah, I think Wardlaw would definitely have been starting in that midfield with LDU and Sheasel for sure.
Harvey Sutherland has come in, and he'll have to wait on the Finbar Malley if he's going to make a team mark. He's already come in there, so yeah, we'll see how we go. But it's pretty much a no-brainer that PL comes in for Wardlaw. Makes pretty much a good replacement. And if we are going to get injuries, Mark, I suppose we might as well get him in the midfield. We've got a list of about 30 of them.
Yeah, that's right. We don't want anyone injured, but yes, if we
of course not.
I've said this on social media before. Larkey and Cherry, to me, are the two we can't afford to get injured because Cherry's a little bit more replaceable with Teakle and Goad. If Larkey gets injured, we potentially have to move Comben forward, which hurts the back line, or we've got to bring in someone, inexperienced who's not capable of kicking 50 or 60 goals in a season yet. As much as I love Finbar, and Teakle's a good player as well, but they're not going to be able to replace Larkey. We'd have huge trouble. So, if there's going to be an injury, it's probably better it's a running player at this stage for us. We need the spine to stay healthy.
No, that's exactly right. Now, this is probably going to be, I think there's going to be divided opinions by a lot of people with the forward six. This could go in a lot of different directions. Who you got in your forward six?
The starting forward six, I've got Simpkin, Darling, Curtis across the forward flanks, and then forward pocket, Parker, Larkey, full forward, Zerha. There's no shocks in that forward line. Simpkin and Parker. Well, Simpkin I think will play as an extra mid if he's playing on the forward line. He'll go up. He'll be around. He'll go up and almost play as an extra midfielder floating back. But the other five will be more deep, playing more deep. Darling might be also the guy who'll get up the ground for the high kick up the ground as well, and probably try and keep Larkey a bit deeper now. And Zerha will probably be a bit more active than he's been as well. He'll probably get up the ground a bit more. But yeah, there's a lot of different ways they can cut that forward line. I haven't got Dersma in that starting forward line. And he could potentially, but again, he might be one they might. And Eddie Ford's another one who's been in great form, playing deep early in the pre-season. So yeah, and also there's no pressure small forward in that starting forward line I've got either. So there's different options they can use.
There wasn't any temptation to find it. I guess you could probably have Simpkin as that pressuring small forward. That's an interesting role for him this year, isn't it? What role he actually plays. It looks like he's going to play, like you said, a high half forward with about 10 to 12 CBAs. We've tried that before the last couple of years, but we sort of panic after about round 3 or 4 when we've copped a couple of beltings, and we've gone back to what we know, and that's putting Simpkin back in the midfield. But I guess with the amount of midfielders we've got coming through, we've got to try him somewhere else, don't we?
I think Powell and Phillips are now at a stage of their career where they're not kids anymore. Powell in particular looks like he's ready to explode, and Phillips, if he's ever going to make it as an AFL player, I think he's going to show it this year. He's built his tank up, and he's strong. He looks like he's like a little brick now. So his pre-season form's been outstanding. So I think there's less panic around. Even with Wardlaw out, I don't think there's a lot of panic around the midfield. I mean, Parker's a big body too, so I'm sure if they're getting out-muscled, Parker's probably the first one to go in rather than Simpkin now. So, they've got options, and as we talked about earlier, they've got Urquhart, who's developing as that big midfielder as well, more down the track. So, and we don't need to, like, McKercher can stay outside. They don't need to throw him in if they don't need to. And same with Finn O'Sullivan, they don't have to throw him in there either. So there's a lot of different. I mean, the one thing you have to say with Clarko is he's certainly developed a squad that's flexible. And he's been very open about the fact he wants guys who can play multiple positions. He's got a number of people who can play wing, forward, half back, wing, and midfield and other positions. There's only a few pure mids that can't play anywhere else. I think George is a bit like that. I think Phillips, unfortunately, struggles to play anywhere else but midfield, which makes it hard for him. The Wardlaw injury has probably given him his best chance as we move towards talking about the interchange. Yeah. But, I mean, interchange or first 22, I don't think makes a lot of difference.
No, of course. I mean, they all rotate through. So, it's a squad of 22 plus a sub.
Yeah.
So, I mean, Eddie Ford is an interesting one. Now, like you said, they've been talking him up in pre-season. He's playing deep forward. I just can't see him getting a game, Mark, to be honest with you. I don't know. It's probably between him and Dersma.
Well, that's funny you say that. So, I've got in my writing in front of me, I've got in the interchange Dersma or Ford.
Oh, okay. Well, there you go.
So, because I can't, right now, Dersma hasn't played much, but he's got a month to go, and they're going to give him every chance. Plus, he's beautifully skilled as a mid as well. So, and he's big, yeah. So, with obviously great mark, but Eddie's a great competitor, and he's having another good preseason. He never really fails, Eddie. So, if they were picking the side, if they were playing this weekend, I think Ford would get the nod over him. But I think by the time they get to round one, I've got the feeling, and I'll say now, I've got Dersma on my bench and I've got Ford as the emergency. Because Eddie can play wing as well. He can play some multiple positions, so he's not a bad emergency to have. So I'll tell you the interchange. There's Phillips, Robert Hansen Jr., Dersma, and Finn O'Sullivan. So they've got some flexibility. Phillips is the one, obviously, is the midfielder. Robert Hansen Jr. gives them the pressure forward. Dersma is the marking third forward, tall, that also can drift up into the wing midfield, play outside. And Finn O'Sullivan can play half back or half forward or wing. So it gives them a bit of flexibility there. And then, forward is the emergency. So, but, I mean, you think about the players I've left out. Gota, Hardeman, Stevens, who they brought in from Sydney as a top six pick. And I know a lot of people criticise him about his intensity, but I think he's a good player and he's got a huge tank. So I think he'll play a lot of footy this year. I think all these guys will. Luke McDonald. Finn Barmalley's the one I'd love to put in. But I think that that would really make it difficult that could make us a bit oversized in that forward line. I think he will play. He will debut at some point this year, probably sooner rather than later. From what I haven't seen him play yet, apart from the VFL games, but it sounds like he's clunking everything. But his kicking's really causing a few issues. So if he gets his kicking right, he'll force his way in at some point. Will Dawson's recovering from his shoulder injury. Tucker was solid last year, but I can't find a spot for him. Urquhart's been great. Midfield Goads come on. Constantly looked great the other week when he kicked a couple of goals in limited minutes. Teak or Pink were playing most games last year, and Bergman's shown plenty. And then you've got players like Harvey as well. So there's a lot of depth there now. Those guys will probably all play seniors at some point this year. Yeah. It's just going to be a question of four. And right now, you'd have to say there's going to be more pressure on the starting 23 than at any stage in the last 5 years, to hold their spot if they're out of form. So that's a good thing.
Well, certainly starting to get players that are starting to mature, getting to that 30, 40, 50 plus game mark. You mentioned Darcy Tucker, still a good veteran to have around a club. And I mentioned this to Jesse Dade. I mentioned this numerous times. Like, if you want to take that next step and be a better team, then probably someone like Darcy Tucker shouldn't be in your best 22, best 23. I think he's a good placeholder. When he was at Fremantle, he played when they were a poor team, you got a game. As soon as they became a top 4, top 5 team, I think they finished 5th. He couldn't get a game, so
and I think that's true of Bergman and Pink as well. There'd be serviceable players in the side, and they're great clubmen and depth players, but you probably don't want them in your starting 22 without injuries.
No, fair enough. I think, we've had a couple people come in. Inflatable Cactus asked before Ford ahead of Dersma, as he's a bit worried that Dersma doesn't have the defensive side. He says he has no tackling ability yet, but he doesn't probably have that defensive side, whereas Ford probably is making progress in that area. Look, you might have convinced me to go Ford, not that he's ahead of Dersma, only because Dersma's pre-season has been a little interrupted.
If it was, I mean, that's what I said. If it was this weekend, Ford plays ahead of him. I mean, that's a speculative pick for me, putting Dersma in there. I'm backing him in to do something in the next 4 weeks to justify it. If it stays the status quo as of now, Ford's ahead of him for sure.
No, that's right. Yeah, I mean, like you said, there's 5 or 6 weeks till this plays out, and there's a couple of practice matches coming up, intra-club matches and so forth. So they'll definitely be fighting for that, you'd have to think. And you're high on Robert Hansen Jr. this year, Mark?
I'm very excited about him, I have to say. Because, I mean, both him and look, I'm excited that Constantine's starting to show some form as well. Because I think a small defensive forward that can kick 1 or 2 goals every week for us, a 30-goal small forward with great tackling pressure is the biggest thing we've had missing. I'm excited about Jack Darling having a great history of defensive tackling in the forward 50. Yeah. Given he's a tall player, that's a massive bonus. Curtis and Zerha have to improve that area, and I think we've seen in the preseason, Curtis certainly looks like that's something he's definitely worked on. And Cam Zerha's fitter. He looks fitter than he's been in years. So I'm hoping that's something he brings as well. But Robert Hansen Jr.'s got genuine speed. He's stronger now. He's a lot more confident. He finished off last year well, and he sounds like he's having a very good preseason. So he at the moment, he's the front runner for that small forward pressure role. And he's got some X factor. So very excited by it. He and Finbar are the two that we've got for nothing that are showing some X factor. One, Finbar's the marking, and also, by the way, he came in the top 6 in the 2K. So the guy can run. So he'd be very handy getting up the ground, taking the long kick down the wing, down the track. It's just, obviously, last year they were very worried about his more his footy knowledge, just understanding where to go, where to be at the right time. He struggled with that, but that's clearly improved dramatically. And now really it's just his kicking. If he can sort that out, which you would hope they can, he'll get his chance. But, the small forward thing's been a real issue for us. So I'm really hoping that gets resolved. And it sounds like we've got a couple of good options now. Payne seems like he's got a fair way to go. Harvey hasn't proven himself by a long shot yet, certainly defensively. So those two, they've got a long way. They've got a big uphill battle to get a game, I would think, at the moment, Payne and Harvey. But Constantine and Robert Hansen Jr. are definitely battling it out for that spot on the bench, I would think, as a small forward.
Yeah, with Hansen, I mean, I guess the main concern with him is the defensive side. Now, I'm going to ask you this question. I don't know if you listen to Jesse or Dave, but do you know how many tackles inside 50 Robert Hansen laid in 7 games last year?
That doesn't sound promising.
It's not.
Well, it's going to be 2 or 3 by the sound of that.
It's 1. So, that's the part of it.
It was a very good tackle, though. He brought the
I don't remember him doing it. So, so I think that's the part of his game that he's lacking. But from all reports in pre-season, they are working really hard with him on that defensive side, because that's where the game is at, isn't it, Mark? That forward half. Yeah. It's one of the most important positions on the ground. Keeping that ball in the forward half. I mean, you've seen last year, any game more competitive in those inside forward 50 entries. You talk about the Melbourne game, the Collingwood game, a couple of others during that middle part of the year. We were competitive in every game where the inside 50 count was even or we were ahead. So that's where the game's at right now, isn't it? Like, we really need to work on that forward half again, don't we?
100%. So that Collingwood game, well, let's just talk about the post-bye period where we look like a different – like Clarko said he changed the way he was thinking Which also I think, people are feeling very pessimistic at North supporters, as would be understandable given the 5 years we've been through. I think they should, with where Clarko's concerned, I think there is a benefit now in he's had a clear run for 12 months or close to it. The Hawthorn thing really did some serious damage to most of his first 2 years. And then there was at the end of before pre-season last year, we changed almost the entire coaching group underneath him, apart from Patch and a couple of others. The whole group changed over. Then we brought in all these great development coaches. Nothing's changed. So the whole coaching group has stayed unchanged going into this season. So they've got great stability now. They've got a great development group in there. Clarko's free of all the hassle that he had. And he changed his attitude after the bye and sort of said, I'm all in. And then suddenly we saw this intensity change within the playing group. It didn't last till the end of the season, which is understandable. But the pressure index, which was embarrassing pre-bye, suddenly became competitive against Collingwood, against Melbourne, and in the games that we won, Gold Coast, Richmond. So it changed. By the end of the season, we were cooked and we'd burned ourselves out. But I'd imagine we'll start the season exactly like that, which you would hope means we're competitive in that first 5 or 6 rounds. Result, it will be what it'll be, but we'll be competitive, and we certainly won't be going to the start of the year with that perception that we expect to lose, but we just want to see green shoots. I don't think there'll be that sort of mentality that we've had to suffer through as supporters for the last. We know where we're at. We're just trying to see some positive. I don't think they'll be coming in. I don't think Clarko's got that mindset coming into the start of this year. I think he knows, and the club knows, they expect to win games. Doesn't have to be 10, 12, 15 games, but they'll be expecting to win 6+ going to this year, and I think they should. I really do.
No. The pressure has to be on everyone at the club now, doesn't it? The expectation is not just to be competitive anymore; it's to win games of football. They've made that clear, even with recruiting, like giving away a future first for late second round picks, or we're after all the academy and all that sort of thing. So they're going to be late second round picks. The expectation now is you have to start winning 6+ games, don't you?
Yeah. No, I think we're rebuilding. We're kids. I don't think we'll hear that at all this year. I think, and to be honest, I think supporters would lose it if they heard. There'll be no more nourishment. There'll be no more green shoots. There'll be no more. We can see what they're going to be like in 4 or 5 years. They want to see us competitive, even if they're losing games, but highly competitive and intense and desperate and not getting pushed around. Like the effort of the Collingwood game and the Melbourne game, I think that they expect to see that 15 times next season rather than once or twice. I think that'll be the difference. Whether that means 6 or 7 or 8 wins or 9 wins, I don't know, but that's what the supporters will be expecting to see. It shouldn't be a shock next year for us to be playing like that, whereas it was last year.
No, definitely. And we've got a standard now of where we want to get to and how we want to play those 6 to 8 weeks after the bye period.
The coaching group's stable. They've got a good development team. The team's more mature with the 3 older guys they brought in. The game plan should be more stable. They're certainly fitter and stronger now. They're doing more during the pre-season, whereas 3 years ago they were very careful about building up during the pre-season. They've got more depth. The leadership now is a bit more solid with a broader group of experience. And I just think the playing group mentally must be desperate to win games. They'd be going, we can't have this anymore. We're sick of it. Last year they said they were sick of it, but it wasn't really that believable. Whereas now that every player talks like that, and it does sound like, they'll do anything to avoid a repeat of the last 5 years where it's been 2 or 3 wins. And I understand supporters just go, I refuse to believe it till I see it. That's fair enough. But I do think circumstances are different now. I think there's a lot of things in our favour that, we should have won 5 or 6 last year. So it'd be very disappointing if they weren't doing at least that next year, or this year, I should say.
No, that's right. We expected to take steps last year, and we kind of showed little period of 8 weeks outside of that was pretty disappointing.
Don't forget we had the Taron Thomas thing going on.
Of
I mean,
course.
you still had the Hawthorn. There's been so much drama, whereas it feels very stable now. And look, even the issue with us leaving Tassie and playing extra games in Perth, I think that's settled down. I think there's, some people aren't happy about it, but eventually it'll lead to more games in Melbourne. And we've got a good supporter base in Perth and certainly good financially for the club. So there's not much disappointing that's happening around the club. There's not many things to worry about. Our injury list, and apart from the George situation, the injury list is pretty good at the moment. Most guys have recovered or getting close to being ready to play for round one, with be it VFL or AFL level. Callum Coleman-Jones is the only one who's really coming along slowly, but everyone else is sort of getting there. So we've got a pretty healthy list at the moment.
Yeah, well, Callum Coleman-Jones, he's in round 3 or 4 last year as Achilles, so that's 12 months. So you're probably looking at by the time he plays VFL for a month or so, you're probably looking second half of the year with him. Big contract year coming up for him as well. Dylan Stephens, how are you feeling about him? Few mixed reports. Some people are sort of on the fence with him, I guess, to put it nicely. But, do you think he's probably out of your best 22, 23 come round one if we don't have injuries?
He is at the moment, but I wouldn't be. But I believe in him. I think he's going to be a very good player. I mean, people get too. There's a massive difference between people being scared and people just lacking confidence. And I think, and from what I'm hearing as well, his contest work's improved dramatically through the preseason. He's got a massive tank. He's quick. He's got a beautiful kick. He was a pick 6 for a reason. I think he'll be a really good player. I think he's just one of these late developers. But in the same way, Robert Hansen Jr., halfway through last year, he was barely looked like he was capable of playing at VFL level. Now he looks like he's going to play round one for us this season. So things change pretty fast in terms of that area of the game. I think confidence is a big thing. Fortunately for Jaden Stevenson, he never got his back, or he did very briefly for a while, but then lost it again and never got it back. And he's obviously now gone. But I hope that doesn't happen with Dylan Stevenson. I hope he becomes a good player for us because I think he's capable.
He certainly showed some signs. Like there was that Melbourne game where he came on as a sub. He had a really good last quarter, made a real big impact. We just got to see more consistency, and probably a couple efforts there last year just went up to the standard as well, which probably
that often is a confidence thing. But the playing group like him, so he's well liked at the club, or Disco as they call him. But he's I think he'll be okay. It's not easy to break into that side on the wing at the moment. He's got some competition. Scott and McKercher, if they're the two preferred players at the moment, no one's going to throw them out. And then he's got Finn O'Sullivan to deal with. He's got a great tank and he's quick as well and a beautiful kick. So and good overhead. The only thing Finn O'Sullivan hasn't got is experience. And he'll take a bit of time. We can't get too excited about what he'll do in his first year, but he showed plenty in the VFL last year as a underager. So we'll see what happens there. But that's an interesting one with him. There's some competition around those wing spots.
No, that's right.
And with some of these young guys like Urquhart putting their hand up as well.
Yeah, I couldn't see, just on Luke Urquhart, I probably couldn't see him getting a game because he's a midfielder. We've got about 10 midfielders probably at the moment at the club, and that's counting the George Wardle injury. I just can't see who he would replace. I mean, he's a player that if you get 2 or 3 more injuries, he certainly comes in the calculations, but not at the moment, I wouldn't think, Mark.
No. His kicking's substandard, so I think that keeps him out of the side unless without injuries till at least mid-season. They can't look. Apparently he's going to be unbelievably strong. He's a freak in the contest, and he's already against men. He's already incredibly strong. So he's only going to get bigger and stronger in that area. Who's the big Brisbane gun midfielder? He's brilliant in the grand final too. Ex-Bulldogs premiership player.
Josh Dunkley.
That's right. Yeah, Josh Dunkley. That's right. So apparently he's modelling his game on him, and he's got the same physique. So I think that's smart for him to go down that road. That's his opportunity. But yeah, that's probably 18 months, 2 years away. given the depth we've got in the midfield without injuries. But I think he'll debut this year. I just don't think he'll be playing consistently.
Not bad. I don't mind it. Fino Sullivan, you've talked him up a little bit. Are you on the fence that maybe he's in the round one team? I know there's a lot of players there. If there's a couple of injuries, he probably comes in. But I've been bullish that you don't have to rush kids in. Everyone's pretty excited because he's the new, shiny new toy. He's a new Tesla or whatever you want to call it. I just feel like generally early in the year, teams will, and especially us, will probably go the veteran first that's been there and done that. Especially if you want to start winning games of football and you're not looking so much at development now. I generally think that maybe he might be an emergency for round one, just be out on the outer. They might just pick more of a veteran, like it might be someone like Zach Fisher, like he said, Darcy Tucker even.
Or Dylan Stevens,
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, I think he'll get his chance.
He'll get it going. Yeah.
He'll get it. Well, when I say he'll get his chance, he'll get his chance during the match sim what they're doing with Melbourne, and I reckon he'll go to WA and play in the preseason game against West Coast. But he'll have to earn his place across those two games. At the moment, I've got him on the bench, but I'd be just as happy to see Dylan Stevens playing in that spot as well, because I think there'll be a rotation with the wingers. There'll be an extra winger that'll play round one, so they'll have Scott McKercher there, and then they'll either be I think Dylan Stevens or Fino Sullivan. Fino Sullivan's opportunities that he can probably play back or forward as well. So he does give them a bit more flexibility. But you're quite right. There's no rush with him. Absolutely.
No, not yet. Just one more name, or I suppose you can have them as two players, the Dawson boys. I suppose if Charlie Common does go forward, and maybe Jack Darling might not be up to it because of that. Could you see one of those boys getting into the round one or two team early? I mean, Callum Dawson never really does anything wrong. He just plays a role for the team, nothing fancy. But apparently Will Dawson's looking pretty good as well. Put on a fair bit of size and looking okay.
Will Dawson's going to be a great player for us. He's bloody tall too. I think he's sitting at 201 or 202. Because he kept growing through last year. He hadn't stopped growing, which is because he came in as an 18-year-old. He'd only just turned 18 when we drafted him. I think he's the youngest player in the AFL. But yeah, he was still growing, so he's huge. And he's very mobile for his size. So I think he'll certainly play plenty of games next year. One injury and he'll come in and he can play forward or back. And Callum Dawson's, same thing. I mean, he's not in the starting back line because they've got three tools there, but he's in front of Pink, so I think he's the next one in. And also, you're quite right, Conlon goes forward, he'd come straight in, I would think, or between him and Will, but Will's got the shoulder, so I don't expect him to play in the first 3 or 4 rounds, Will Dawson. I think he'll certainly start getting games after that. And then you've got Finbar, at Wattsday when he comes in, that allows... changes things up as well. So, and then Callum Coleman-Jones the back half of the year. The tools will really be on form. I mean, I'd expect Core, Logan, Coleman to be the starting defenders, and you'd hope that all three of them, their form, and injury wise, they stay in the side. But anything goes wrong there, then we've got some good backups now. But Will Dawson's going to be a great long-term prospect for sure.
We've got Toby Pink as well. Can certainly fill in the role in that back half. So Harvey Sutherland has come in and sort of said match sim of 4 25-minute quarters tomorrow. So I'll be interested to see the reports from that. He'll have to look out for us, Harvey, if you are going. I don't know about you, Mark, but I don't really read too much into these. I'm usually curious to see where players are positioned, if they just want to trial someone different, like an Eddie Ford. Deep forward or or something like that, because generally playing against your own teammates, you do pretty well. You can get caught up in the hype. I think we got caught up in the hype a couple of years ago with Jared Pollack in an intra-club match, and that didn't work out too well. So do you read too much into those things?
No, it's more the fringe players that I get excited about. So when I hear Finbar Mally's just outmarking Comben at will, and marking it, taking huge pack marks, and you go, well, that's not doing well against someone you know. That's just they're pack marks. Doesn't matter who's playing. Right. So that's exciting. Or a Robert Hansen Jr. doing things differently, like being more aggressive towards the man and that sort of stuff. Go, yeah, well, that's a good sign. Or and Powell's obviously been exciting to hear about his confidence and the fact he's playing the way he has been. So it's more that sort of stuff that gets you excited rather than, I don't really care what LDU's doing or Sheasel's doing.
Well, they're coasting at the moment. So
yeah, that's right. It's just for them, it's just like until they've got the crowd there, they're not going to get excited. But probably Cherry's the same. Like it really doesn't matter what he does between. But hearing what Goad's doing, that gets me excited. So hearing a 207 centimetre Goad who's put on weight is suddenly was tearing Comben apart as a forward when he went forward on the lead because no one can keep up with him. He's so quick. You go, we might have a unicorn there, like who's going to do something extraordinary in the next 3 or 4 years. So that stuff's exciting because last year Goad was so skinny he just couldn't compete. And now the guy looks like he's put on about 12 or 13 kilos. He's a completely different player. He's competing hard with Cherry, although Cherry's obviously not, he can ragdoll him still, of course. But but then he plays on Teakle and more than held his own. So he's suddenly potentially the second ruck key forward option, down the track in the season. So I think he'll play a game this year, Goad. Last year I thought, no, he won't even play in 2025. But now I think he probably might get a game this year at some point. So those sorts of things interest me more in the pre-season than, Finno. We haven't heard Finn O'Sullivan doing anything dramatic, interestingly. He's sort of done okay, but then no one's raving about his form. It's been more Urquhart, to be fair. So that's interesting. But Finn O'Sullivan's not he's never been a huge accumulator anyway. He's more what he does when he's got the ball. So he's not a stats man. He's not going to get 40 possessions. He's going to get 20, but he'll do a lot of damage with them. But so look, you're right though. You just have to see what happens when the real games start. Both VFL and AFL.
No, definitely. Now, Inflatable Cactus come in and said, word on the street is that Zerha will play centre-half back in the match sims, Mark.
That sounds like madness to me. Why would Cam Zerha play centre-half back? He's not tall enough to play key position tall. Because of his X factor, he can do that as a forward because he doesn't have to worry about someone 200 centimetres marking in front of him. And that said, we've had intercept defenders tearing us apart in our own forward line for the last 5 years. So I'm not sure him going to the back line is going to help. That to me makes no sense. I'm trying to think of the reasoning behind that. What benefit that would be to even trial it. I'm assuming that's a joke. I can't.
I hope so.
I can't see any benefit in him playing back in a key position role. It doesn't make sense. But anyway, I know Clarko's desperate for flexibility. So, but he's 190. Zerha. If he was 193, I go, oh yeah, I can see that. But at 190, Goat is 190. Like, you may as well play Goat there. It doesn't make any sense to me. Given he's never played there before.
No, that's right. He's a match winner as well. He kicks goals in the forward half. That's his best football.
And he's a burst player. You can't have a burst player playing defensively. It just doesn't make sense. But anyway, I'll be interested to see if that actually takes place tomorrow.
Well, it could be an All-Australian defender by the end of the year. You never know, Mark. So,
I'll be eating my words. That's
I will be too. So we'll see how that plays out. Mark, you got any final words out there?
No. I'm just like everyone. I'm probably, if you can't be optimistic at this time of the year, for us, we'll never be optimistic. So I think we're going to enjoy the footy a lot more this year than we have for a long time.
No, definitely. I hope so. Well, I'm flying in the pre-season, Mark. I don't know if you've heard. I've put on a lot of muscle. I've the fittest I've ever been. So, so everyone's looking pretty good.
I've put on a lot of something. It doesn't look like muscle.
Yeah, well, maybe they're putting might put you in a half-back line, Mark, just to find a bit of form. So, get you out of that forward half. Well, Mark, I really appreciate you coming on tonight. It's been too long since I chatted to you. Glad to hear you're all well as well. Thanks for coming on, and we'll definitely start getting into a regular routine soon.
Good on you, mate. It's always a pleasure.
And thank you to everyone for tuning in as well. Thanks for coming in with the comments. Harvey Sullivan, Inflatable Cactus. I'll be back. Interesting name, isn't it? Inflatable Cactus. Work on that. I'll be back next week. Like, subscribe, give me a follow, and do all that fun stuff to help the show. Bye for now, and go Roos. Oh, you're gone. Are you gone, Mark?